Thank you, Rolf. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is quite an honor for me to be here for the 30 years of IGS. You have to know, I belong to those with white hair, so I have very good memories. I think if I take the 3 mountains, probably I arrived at the end of the first month and the beginning of the second one, Rolf. And I remember the time when we were doing with Galileo the first signal transmission, and I went to talk to John Dow, that was at the time the head of the navigation office at ISOC. I went to talk to Professor Rydberg. These were fantastic souvenirs. I came here to Bern, where I was preparing with Gunnar Werner the Galileo Reinex format, because it was not yet existing. And then I remember, as you said, Ruth Neelan, when I was presenting Galileo for the first time in the US, received it very well, appreciated a lot the capabilities of the system. And then in 2017, as you say, I had the opportunity to do a keynote at the Paris, invited by Zuelia, that is also here, Altamini, where there was a fantastic presentation given by Oliver, where just before my presentation, he was presenting the very good results that Galileo was achieving with respect to other GNSS. And this gave us a lot of momentum push, and this was very good. So for me, it's really fantastic to see now what Europe is leading in satellite navigation. We are leading with the EGNOS system that is providing satellite-based orientation. If you see the number of LPV procedures published, and 65 of instrumental runway ends equipped with our EGNOS system, is quite an achievement. And if I take Galileo, we went above 4 billion users. We are delivering high accuracy service, open service navigation message authentication, and the number of other capabilities that I will describe. This is thanks also to the very good governance that there is in place, where the European Commission is the program manager. We at ESA are in charge of developing the infrastructure. We build the infrastructure, ground and space infrastructure, and we deliver it to USPA, that is the service provider and the operator of the system. I take note also of Peter here between us from USPA. Then I will talk, in my talk I will address the different topics. I will be available also after my talk, because I realize I have a lot of material. I will address Galileo in operations, Galileo under deployment, the development that is going on at the moment with the second generation, and how at ESA we see the future of navigation. That is also important to prepare the job for the next generation. There are a lot of motivated young engineers here. So Galileo in operation. So a constellation of 30 satellites. We did a launch recently, so we have 30 satellites in orbit, of which 23 are in service. Basically, we have, why 23? Because we have, 2 satellites are the launch-free satellites that are in the highly inclined orbit, you know that. 2 are spares, GSAT 204 and 210, and GSAT 104 is under the commissioning, plus we have the 2 recently launched satellites. You see the average lifetime. Yes. The average lifetime, you see here of the satellites, is around 7 years, and the IUV satellites that we started to launch in 2011, the satellites in orbit have 12 years lifetime. Therefore, they are, some of them are going beyond the satellite lifetime, but still operating well. If we look at the signal in space ranging error, it has improved through time, also due not only to the quality of the orbit determination and time synchronization. I'm talking about a navigation messaging generation. We are at the signal in space error of 22 centimeters to sigma average over all satellites. And this, as you see, has improved through time. If we look at the ranging performance, So signal space error is very stable. You see here the difference in performance between the rubidium clocks. You see here the rubidium clocks, and the rest is passive hydrogen maser. One of the satellites that is the 210 there is going to be has become recently a spare. So very good performance from ranging point of view. And from timing point of view, also excellent performance. We are having, at the moment, if we look at the broadcast UTC offset, we are at 5.65 nanoseconds to sigma against the requirement, a minimum protection level that is in the open service definition document of 30 nanoseconds, so well within the requirement. And also for the GPS to Galileo time offset, the so-called GGTO, we have a very good performance. The requirement assistant level is 5 nanoseconds, and the service level, service definition document level is 20 nanoseconds, and we are well within the 5 nanoseconds. The proof of the timing performance of Galileo has been that BIPM has recently announced that they will introduce Galileo as part of a circular T determination. This for us is an honor because the integration of Galileo timing by the BIPM in the circular T basically represents the highest recognition we could have in the quality of the time we provide, and also is from an independent organization. So this is very important. Other services that are being introduced, so on top of the navigation service, is basically the high accuracy of the open service, is the high accuracy service. This is now providing PPP, precise point positioning correction, on the E6 band, so on the E6 data channel, and the performance are very good, of the order of 20 centimeters horizontal, vertical 40 centimeters, with a convergence time around 5 minutes. And then the objective is to introduce additional stations to further improve and introduce a second level of performance. The navigation message authentication also, I would say, these are unique capabilities that the other GNSS are not providing. This is thanks, I think, to the design of the system that has allowed this built-in from the beginning, allowing for a certain flexibility when we did the design at the beginning of more than 20 years ago. The same, another important feature is the navigation message authentication, where basically we provide on E1 INAV, in 1B INAV, we provide navigation message authentication. And the receiver receives a public key through the GNSS Service Center that is also operated by the USPA in order to provide them the public key and also to update it through on-the-air key. Another capability is the signal authentication service. This is not yet in operation. We are working on that. Basically, you know, to authenticate, data level authentication is less performing than code level authentication. For this, we are introducing separate codes on the E6 pilot. In order to do that, the satellites are equipped with it. It's a capability they have, and we are now in the process of qualifying the ground segment in order to be able to equip the ground segment with the right capability for commanding the satellites, and also at the level of the sensor stations, monitoring stations, so that we can introduce this service. The idea is to complete the qualification end of 2024 in order to be able then for USPA to deliver the service in the context of next year. Safety of life is also an important capability. We are at the moment, throughout the time, we've been characterizing the performance of the satellites, actually the probability of having available the constellation and the probability of having available a single satellite. This has been standardized in the so-called SARPs by ICAO, that has basically introduced the usage of Galileo for safety of life applications. This will enter into service as soon as we declare the full operational capability. This is basically the level of a receiver autonomous integrity monitoring through a probability given upfront to the user against which it can compute its level of integrity at receiver level, and then later on with the second generation we will broadcast an integrity support message for which we have already published the ICD, and you see here the characteristics of a word of a signal in space that has been also published to support the standardization. Last but not least, we are working on the introduction of a quasi-pilot on E5 that is a very important capability, we think, for mass market IoT, Internet of Things type of receivers that want to use basically the signal for acquisition. We are working on that. It reduces very much, it allows faster acquisition, 2 times faster acquisition. This would be included on the E5AQ pilot channel, and we have started introducing it on the 2 launch-free satellites, GSAT 201, 202, for testing purposes, and now in cooperation with USPA we are basically conducting the mass market receiver testing, awaiting for a program level decision. The feedback so far is very positive. So as you see, not only the system is in operation delivering high quality, I saw some of the presentations today that confirmed the high quality of the system, but we are also constantly introducing new capabilities. This is very important for the pace of the users of the market in the end, of GNSS that is rapidly changing constantly. Now, the deployment, we have completed this year an important steps on the deployment. Let me go through it. We have migrated the so-called System Build 2.0. The infrastructure of Galileo, from the ground segment point of view, is really complex. If you think GPS today is the largest infrastructure, ground infrastructure, ground space infrastructure ever deployed by the United States Department of Defense. And I would say Galileo is for the ground segment, is surely the largest infrastructure ever deployed by Europe, and surely the ground segment is the most complex that has ever been built. So one of the challenges when you migrate from one system version to the next system version, you need to do it in a seamless way without interrupting the service. We are talking about 4 control centers, 2 dedicated to security and 2 dedicated to nominal operations, satellite control, mission control, 15 sensor stations, 5 uplink stations, 6 telemetry tracking and control stations, worldwide distributed. So this is quite a capability to deploy. This we have done, to give you an idea, to migrate to the System Build 2.0, we are talking about a qualification of a system that lasted 2 years, 2 years of testing, intense testing at unit level, segment level, system level, followed by a period of rehearsal of 5 months, because we have installed a pre-operational chain close to the operational chain. So basically you install on the pre-operational chain your version N+1 and you make it run. For 5 months you rehearse the migration and then you migrate from one version to the other. It took more or less 6 weeks to migrate from the previous version, that was the System Build 1.7, to the System Build 2.0. So, and as you can see from here, there was a seamless transition to the users. The users have not experienced any interruption of service. This has been quite an achievement, a huge teamwork, and we are talking about teams of 170 people involved in the operational control centers. Also, this is basically the ground segment that will provide the full operational capability for Galileo and will provide also the PRS, the Public Regulated Service, for government access control, so encrypted signal, data, and signal encrypted. We have also resumed the launches. This is very important. I was still the project manager when in 2020 we had to stop the launch campaign in Kourou due to the situation, to the war, and we had to repatriate the satellites back to Europe. We have resumed the launches thanks to an agreement between the European Union and the United States of America. This has allowed us basically to launch with SpaceX. The launch with SpaceX has been remarkable. 28th of April from Kennedy Space Center. We had excellent orbit injection parameters. The satellites have been put at the very right position. We had a very good launch and early orbit phase that completed a few days after, on the 13th of May, and now we are doing the orbit testing. I will talk about that. Next launch is in September. Is launch 13. We target the beginning of September. The team will move to Space Canaveral at the beginning of August, actually, to support the launch campaign. And then, as you know, 9th of July, Ariane 6 first launch. This is very important for giving European access to space, and then following the launch, the hopefully successful maiden launch, we will initiate the launches with Ariane 6 as of next year. The launch campaign has been quite an exciting moment because you have to know, normally a launch campaign we were performing in Kourou is of the order of 3 months. We had to shorten it to 5 weeks. You see here, you see the cadence of the launches in Cape Canaveral by SpaceX. You see basically in 1 week you can have up to 3 launches. That is quite impressive. Also, what is impressive is the reuse of the boosters and the fairing. And the SpaceX can use up to 40 times. It's targeting now. Before it was 20 times the reuse of the boosters. Now is up to 40 times the reuse of the boosters. That is quite incredible. Also, what has been done, in our case, the booster has not been reused because after our launch, because we have a special trajectory given to which the booster is lost, but the fairing were recovered, and you see here the picture of the recovery of the fairing. So not only the boosters, but also the fairing. This is very, very interesting and very good approach. Also, another element of pride, we launched from an historical site, that is the launch pad 28A in Cape Canaveral. This is where the Apollo missions were launched and the Space Shuttle missions were launched. So it's quite nice to be there the first time at the Kennedy Space Center and you launch from the place to be. Actually, this was very good also, very interesting. Now the launch and early orbit phase went very well, as I'm saying. After separation, the spacecraft performs an autonomous initialization sequence, ray dumping, and then sun initial acquisition and solar array deployment. This is the most critical operation, automatic operation at the moment you inject into orbit. And then we conducted the launch and early orbit phase that was very smooth. And then payload in orbit testing, all signals have been tested. We have a tradition since Jove that every time the first signal of a satellite is published, all the people in the room sign the first signal transmitted. And this is a tradition we keep now since almost 20 years. And on the end of August, the in-orbit testing will be completed, and then we will have an in-orbit test review. So I expect that in the September time frame, the 2 new birds will enter into operation. Metadata, you know that in Galileo we care about the usage of the data, and we have been among the first ones to produce a certain data. You see here all the information, and I can also confirm to you that we will provide the information for the center of mass navigation antenna and the different characteristics also for the new satellites that have been launched. We want to go further than that. We have received from the Galileo Scientific Advisory Committee a recommendation for additional metadata to provide. As you know, we are in a Galileo is not only is used also for our purposes that are not only civil, let's say, and this is why this data need to be checked by our security teams. We are in the process of checking that. I think we will give a priority to the clock phase centers information, and then we will release it. We will release it. But we are really very much aware of the usage you do of the data for your purposes, and we support all the activity that the IGS is doing. I take the opportunity also to thank the team of Werner and Erle for the very good, for helping us, the support. I see some of the colleagues here, that Eric, Francesco, that help us in making this data to validate and cross-calibrate those data at internal level before releasing it to the public. It's a very important job, very specific. Galileo under development. So we are preparing the second generation. So today, 30 satellites in orbit. 8 satellites are in storage. We have 8 satellites in storage at OHB premises, ready for the next 4 launches. And then we are building the second generation. Second generation satellite, 6 plus 6, 12. So this gives a production, it gives you an idea of a production. This is not paper, this is hardware delivery. The second generation satellite will be designed for the future. It's very difficult to predict the future. Because you have to build a satellite, as you see, we have 8 satellites in storage. It will take a few years to put them in orbit. So when we designed the second generation satellites that were kicked off at the beginning in 2021, you need to build, to think about a constellation that will be used in 2030, 2040. So you need to have capabilities on board that allow you to cope with different types of services that the user will require. For this, the main characteristic, you see them there, is a digital beamforming network antenna. I think is what Joas showed is the baseline for our second generation satellites. We are building beamforming network antenna with digital signal allowing high configurability of the signals, high power, of course, inter-satellite links at the RF level, onboard authenticated message on board, additional enhanced, I would say, authentication, then autonomy on board to minimize in-orbit maintenance, increase data rate in the ground-to-space communication, improve time reference. We will have 5 clocks instead of 4 we have at the moment, so 3 RAFs plus 2 passive hydrogen maser. Capability electric propulsion for orbit raising capability, allowing to put these satellites in orbit with an Ariane 62, 2 satellites at a time, and a higher lifetime of 15 years. You see here a comparative assessment of a different satellites. So you see the first one are the Jove A, Jove B, then you see that were the experimental satellites, not operational, then the IOV and the FOC satellites. And the FOC satellites, this is basically what is in operation at the moment, and the ones we launch are on this category. You see the mass is increasing drastically, the power as well, the volume. We are talking about satellites that are a volume factor 3 from the FOC satellites, and you see also the number of clocks is increasing, and we allow 4 experimental clocks also on board. So not only 5 clocks operational, but also the possibility to add another clock experimental, so that you can in orbit validate in orbit new technologies for clocks. That is fundamental. And of course Ariane 6 launch and planned launch from 2026 on. Here you see the comparative assessment of the satellite classes, looking at the FOC satellite of today, what will be the G2 satellites of the future. I repeat, this is not paper. We have kicked off 6 satellites are built by Thales Alenia Space in Italy. We have recently completed the critical design review. Basically, the critical design review is authorization to manufacture. You complete the design of a system and then you authorize its manufacture. All the units are now coming for integration. I will show you some pictures. If I see here, you see picture. Basically, they are at the level of a structural model. We've been doing acoustic testing. You see the number of loudspeakers around the satellites for acoustic testing. We did acoustic testing also at Testec. And then we did 2 satellites, one on top of the other, representative of the launch stack on an Ariane 62, so that you can check that the shock level of a structural model. This is what we use the structural model for. Acoustic, basically, and shock levels representative of a launch environment. And then we have started the signal generation. We had radiative testing of a navigation payload at Testec in our Hertz facility, and we are now completing a dedicated facility at Testec to be able. ESTEC is the technical center of the European Space Agency where I work, where we are completing a new facility in order, anechoic chamber, to test the digital beamforming type of transmission. Likewise, we are building our 6 satellites with another prime, so dual source, this Airbus in Friedrichshafen in Germany, and they are very similarly. We have completed the critical design review, and you see here similar type of pictures. You see the first flight model arriving in the Airbus clean room, assembled for testing, and you see here the generation of a signal, so in our navigation payload radiative testing. We have, for this satellite, the flight model arrived in November last year, and then we will have the structure of a second satellite delivered in July, so this month. And then we have a test that is very important at system level. We call it system compatibility testing, where basically the satellite is on ground, but is connected to the control center, to the 2 control centers, and basically you send the commands to the satellite and navigation message to the satellite that in turn in the clean room transmits to a receiver. This is the ultimate test where on ground basically you simulate the entire chain end-to-end between control center and the receiver on ground. Is the ultimate system level test to give you confidence before going for the full production. Now, a few words about the future. It's very important that, GNSS is like a wave. We are now on top of the wave. I think we are leading. The leadership of Europe, as I said, in navigation is recognized, but we see that in order to remain on top of a wave, you need to have a high push on the innovation side to keep modernizing the system. So we are at the moment in the program, in ESA in particular, we are looking basically to the future. What are the main ingredients for the future from my point of view? First, more and more, we will move towards to ensure robustness and resilience. This was the presentation also of yours was indicating it. We needed to go to a system of PNT system, so multi-layer architecture. Today we can say that we have already a sort of multi-layer architecture because we have a satellite-based augmentation in the geo orbit, we have the MEO orbit. We are now pushing to introduce a low Earth orbit constellation. I will talk about it. This allows to reach robustness and resilience, but not only. introducing new type of services that you cannot introduce in a MEO layer. I think, for instance, indoor navigation or integration of non-terrestrial network 5G, 6G with the navigation system. Time is also very important, it's a very critical element. There is a lot of work ongoing through the different countries to have a resilient timing infrastructure. Timing is very important for critical infrastructure. Europe is leading on optical technology for ranging and time synchronization. We think that optical intersatellite link is the future, and we are working on that. And then also we need more to look into disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum technology. There are a lot of activities on PNT associated to quantum that we need to look into that. And then lunar and space exploration. The idea is to put in place a program of in-orbit demonstrators. So when technology has reached a certain maturity, you cannot think to put it right away on board an operational system. This system has quite a momentum, require time before you can put on board a new capability. So therefore, in-orbit demonstrator. We want to put in place a program allowing quick, fast and low-cost in-orbit demonstration of technology, constantly giving then elements to the operational system. One of the first in-orbit demonstrators is the low Earth orbit position navigation and timing constellation. We have signed 2 contracts in March, one with Thales, the other one with GMB, in order to produce, in the case of GMB, 12 units CubeSat is a Pathfinder, so-called Pathfinder 8 that we plan to launch by end of next year, and this will be followed then by 4 microsats of the order of 100 kilos in this orbit, transmitting in different frequencies, not only L-band but also S-band, 5G, 6G coordination with that, C-band also for navigation and other type of signals that we are testing. And the other is from Thales, a similar type of satellites. What is the target? The target is resilience and robustness, augmentation of Galileo and EGNOS. We can think that this sort of satellites can be a sort of sensor stations that monitor the satellites from low Earth orbit without let's say, environment constraints, so can be very powerful, even to provide integrity to the system. And also new type of services, like, as I said, 5G, 6G integrated network with navigation. We are looking, these are contracts activity we are running. This is instead an in-orbit demonstrator. We are working for a demonstrator for optical intersatellite link capabilities, basically not oriented to communication, but oriented, we see very much the development that are going on optical intersatellite link for communication. The next step is to use it for ranging and time synchronization. And we want to demonstrate the system concept in orbit of synchronized satellites through optical link, and also distribution across continents of time using optical links. This is the objective of this demonstrator. Genesis, I think Pierre is here from our team. He will present on Thursday, I think also with the colleagues of ISO, the Genesis mission. Is a fantastic mission. I really want to thank the IGS for all the support we have been receiving for this mission. Its objective is to contribute to improve ITRF accuracy and stability. We have named accuracy contribution up to 1 millimeter. This we know is very ambitious. For this we put on board the satellite a number of payloads, very long base interferometry, long baseline interferometry, satellite laser ranging, GNSS receiver, and a DORIS receiver. For an orbit of 6,000 kilometers, a satellite built of 250-300 kilos by OHB Italia. I was myself at the workshop with many of you that were there on 29th of February, the workshop organized at ESOC. You see now all working groups and the coordinator are in place. Many of them are here in the room, and I really want to thank you. Please, don't think only to the exploitation of the data. Your role as a user is also to help us in solve out the critical issues at system level in the manufacturing of a satellite, because the objective, the target of a mission is very ambitious, and we need to put together all our competence in order to have a type of satellites that allows to characterize all the biases, all the different aspects of the different instruments to deliver its mission. We know it's a challenge. I also invite you to the GNSS Scientific Colloquium. We are doing activities at GNSS for Science. My colleague Vicente Navarro presented it earlier this morning, and we are delivering the data for that, and also we collect this group is very important because, for instance, you see is the group that behind which that gave us the push to provide the metadata to the user community, and this is very important. And the next workshop will be in 3 months from now, towards the end of September in Poland, Wrocław, and I'm sure Vicente can give you all the details about it. Next step is not to remain on Earth, to the Moon, to bring navigation capabilities to the Moon. And we are putting in place a lunar communication navigation system for initial operational capabilities in 2028 in order to deliver communication capabilities and navigation capabilities. We are in these days evaluating, we have received the offer from industry, and we are evaluating it to kick off the activity in October this year. These are the type of requirements we are targeting for, if I take the most demanding one, is for a surface rover with a real-time positioning around 10 meters and post-processing of the order of 3 meters. And as you see from the simulations we have done using real data and published, we think this is feasible. We are talking about a constellation of 4 satellites in elliptical orbit around the Moon for the navigation and 1 satellite for the communication. The driver would be to deliver navigation capabilities with a GDOP lower than 4, at least 15 hours in the South Pole. This would be the driver for the navigation capability. After that, we are working also in putting stations on the Moon. It's a perfect opportunity for landers to bring stations to the Moon, and this gives incredible opportunities because we are working now with our human robotic exploration team to have a station equipped with VLBI, laser retroreflector, two-way time transfer, two-way distance measuring equipment, and VLBI, in order to be able to have a differential connection on the Moon. This would also allow to have a geodetic or selenodetic reference station on the lunar surface, giving a very accurate position, and not only embarking a mini RAFs on it, we can also contribute to lunar time. So we are very much working on that to prepare also the future. So we are shaping the future of navigation. We are delivering, as you see, there is a constant delivery on time and with high quality and high commitment from the entire program, and in particular for the ground and space infrastructure from the European Space Agency. We are continuously pushing for innovation. It's very important we keep leadership. And also we have next year, Rolf, we will celebrate in ESTEC, we will celebrate the 30 years of ESA navigation. So I was very pleased to be invited today, and I can tell you these are 30 years we have been working together, hand in hand, Galileo team and the IGS. Thanks a lot.